Hey, we're together again, and I did a teaser earlier about Governor releasing his budget and how the path we've been going down will not work, maybe for a couple of years. And then I did a segment talking about the need for a sunset commission, robust audit that would stick in place and really help us, as well as fixing the spending cap in the Constitution. And on this video, I want to go into some detail to talk to you about the revenue side. You know, we have the spending side and tightening the belt, and then we have the revenue side, the incoming money. And as I mentioned before, if you look back about a dozen years with the oil production and prices, we brought in about $4 billion more than we are now. So we've been pulling from the PFD and from various accounts and savings, really drained down the constitutional budget reserve. So we're at a point where we have to make some decisions. It's very pivotal right now. And it's very pivotal that we have leadership that understands us and can get this through. And trust me, I've worked on it. I've been on fiscal plan working groups, been very disappointed. We even had one where we actually had 50 of 60 legislators agree with us after we put it forward. The 10 or so that didn't were committee chairmen of the very committees the plan would have to travel through. So it was dead because we didn't have the support of those committee people. So I've spent hundreds of hours working on this issue, and I believe I'm the best candidate to lead us through this time. So let's talk about the revenue side. With that much that we don't have anymore, you can't tax a small population of 740,000 people. It's not realistic. If we were to impose an income tax to try to make up that gap, you would have a mass exodus out of the state. And history shows this because you can look at other states when that happened. You know, income taxes didn't exist in states a long time ago, so you can actually see what happened. Big wave of population moves out, and they're going to states where there aren't an income tax, okay? Income tax, very bad idea. We're already struggling with not having workforce that we need. We cannot have our workers leave. Income tax needs to be totally off the table. So one of the things that I am proposing is not a quick overnight fix, but we must get started on it, and that is expanding the tax base, which includes diversifying the economy. So then how do you do that? I have action steps to get us there. Of course, the gas line is looking very promising. We're watching that very closely, very hopeful. We'll see what happens. But that won't give us cheap energy, really cheap energy that would allow us to open up new industries, more mining, data centers, and all that kind of thing. We're gonna have to pair it with other types of energy. And we are blessed with opulent energy resources. We have hydro like crazy, 3 million lakes, 12,000 rivers. We've got to tap in and have hydro. The Susitna-Watana Dam would be off the shelf on day one. We'd be working on getting the FERC license as your governor. That would be a priority. But we have a lot of hydro projects, smaller hydro all over the state. We have clean coal. We have more than half the nation's supply. We could build it up near Healy and have power lines. The small nuclear reactors are coming on board in 2030. That would allow us to have even off the road system, have mining operations. Once you have cheap energy, Alaskans, it's going to change everything. Everything. It's not just your utility bills that are going to be lower. It's going to impact food prices, everything, every service, every product, because power, energy, is part of the overhead of everything in our lives. So now we have the opportunity for brand new industries. I mentioned data centers. I'm going to mention also the manufacturing. We've never really thought of manufacturing here because of the cost of energy. So you're going to have new doors open. And once you expand your tax base, that's going to increase the revenue without increasing taxes on anyone. And you know, I don't want to kill the golden goose. There's a lot of talk about raising taxes on the oil industry. You know, you look at what they make here versus in other places and the kind of expenses. I'm actually surprised somewhat that they're here rather than in Texas. So this idea that they're just, you know, stealing money, it's just not true. So expand our tax base is going to increase our revenue. Now, I do want to say this, like I said, it's not overnight. You don't flip a light switch and have an expanded tax base. This is going to take persistent effort over a number of years. So, you know, I'm pragmatic, I'm realistic, you know, don't stick my head in the sand. So there may be an interim period once we're auditing things and we show there's a demonstrated need and we're waiting for these other things to come online. If there is a shortfall And it may not be when I'm governor, it could be down the road. There may need to be a tax. And I tell you, income tax, very bad. A sales tax, better. Would not include groceries. I would not include medicine, healthcare. But I will say it does give the individual, it gives the Alaskan, it would give you the option whether to buy something or not, so whether you pay the tax or not. And also, it actually, the total you would collect from Alaskans would be smaller under a sales tax than it would be an income tax, because tourists would be helping with the sales tax. In fact, Juneau alone had over 2 million visitors last year. Okay, so we have a lot of tourists coming into the state. But if whoever is governor, I want you as Alaskans to be thinking of this, and I will fight with you. If push comes to shove and we need something like that in the interim, we absolutely must insist that it have a sunset date, because you shouldn't put something like that into perpetuity, because as you're expanding the tax base, the idea is that the need for that will decrease. So you have to have a sunset date in it. The other thing you have to do is a release valve in that other revenues pick up. So let's say, oil is a worldwide commodity. Those prices can change and fluctuate with the market. If oil prices go up, any kind of like a sales tax on you should go down. So it's very important that we have those kind of elements if we get to that point. But the most important thing is that we get our fiscal house in order and our spending in order. We fix our spending cap in the Constitution. We work on really growing our energy to bring the prices down, open up doors to new industry. And I want to talk about the PFD also, because one of the things, and back to the economy, and it's related to the PFD, because at statehood, we did not get our subsurface rights. We kind of got the shaft, we really did. Other states have it. If we're not going to have a PFD, or maybe even if we can salvage the PFD, and I'm a PFD proponent because I understand $1 in the private sector has a multiplier that doesn't happen in state government. So at this point, it's not a matter of paying a full PFD, it's a matter of salvaging it. And there are different options and different things we can consider in that way. But I tell you, I do not support an income tax to pay for a PFD. That would be stupidity. But the PFD and the whole no subsurface rights, one thing we could look at, if we looked at the Constitution to fix the spending cap, we could return subsurface rights to the private landowner. But you know what? Less than 1% of this state is available for private land ownership. And I want to work on that too. The federal government took a land grab in this state they should not have taken. There's something called the equal footing doctrine, where all the states are to come into the union on equal footing. We did not. We got the shaft. I say the shaft twice because we sure got it. The federal government owns 62% of Alaska. New York, as an example, the federal government owns less than 1%. So as your governor, I would fight to get some of that federal land back. I think this federal administration would cooperate with us, and the makeup of the Supreme Court would be favorable to that. So I really think getting more land in Alaskans' hand is part of the key to growing our economy, and it's part of a Homestead Act to get some of that land into young families' hands, into farmers' hands, to bring people, even in the lower 48, who are interested in farming and making sure they can get blocks of land. We need some sort of Homestead Act so we get greater private land ownership. That's part of the solution as well. So all these things are very interconnected. These are systems. You have to have system-minded thinking. We don't want to do something rash that in a few years we realize it's going to throw something else off in the system. For instance, if we rashly put our income tax, all of a sudden we'd realize we don't have the workers that we need. We could work on low-cost energy and then our workers would be gone. We wouldn't even have them for the jobs. So it's very important that we think of this as a system and make sure we do all these things in conjunction and work towards our goal, which is to make sure we have a responsive state government that is run efficiently and that you are not overburdened and burdened with paying it, that you can afford what you need to do to live a good life here. So I am open to more questions. I'm open to your suggestions and input. And as I have always said, in a constitutional republic, it is a two-way street. It is not just me communicating with you, but as I represent you, you need to communicate with me. So I'm open to your input, open to your ideas, but it is not a simple fix. It's all these things have to work together, and you need a governor who sees the big picture and can bring it and actually has the relationships and the persistence and the vision to get it done. And I believe that I have that to offer to you, and I hope you will consider supporting me. And with that, we'll conclude this long discussion that is the aftermath of Governor Dunleavy introducing a budget that might work this year, but it's not going to work in a couple of years. We've got to get to the drawing table and get some things done. Thank you.
Paid for by Alaskans for Hughes, P.O. Box 1496, Palmer, Alaska 99645.